Growing up, I was accustomed to assigned seats in school. Perhaps you were as well. Our teachers typically made students sit in alphabetical order. Stacy Allen was usually by the front door. And poor Greg Zermino, more often than not, was stuck way in the back corner. Being an H, I was usually somewhere in the middle, always directly behind my good friend Jason Hoover. For 12 years, the back of his head was burnished into my subconscious. Lunchtime was a different matter, however. We could sit with our friends, regardless of the first letter of their last name. But when the bell rang, we would all dutifully fall back into alphabetical line to head back to class. Now, I'm not accusing my teachers of being Pharisees, but let's say they liked order. No surprises, and don't even think about moving. In the ancient world, guests were seated according to a clear hierarchy of importance. The place of honor was at the right hand of the host. The person who sat at the left hand was in second place. And other places of importance trickled down from there. At the very end of the table were the places for the lowliest of importance. It was a patriarchal culture, so that's where you would find the women, along with children and slaves. We still see something like this in our present day. You may not even recognize it's happening. It's called dynamic pricing. And it happens with great regularity, depending on how much we are willing to pay. If you pony up enough, you can have aisle seats closest to the stage at a concert, or a fast pass with no waiting at Disney, or that holiest of holy grails, extra legroom when you fly. Jesus uses this hierarchical order in our gospel today from St. Luke. But this is not first century Palestine, so what does he mean to say to us in the 21st century? Here's a hint. He's not giving etiquette tips or manners or how to secure the best place at a dinner party. No, this is a parable, a teaching moment. And regardless of where your assigned seat is located, the lesson is the same. It's about the host, not the guest. The host is key. The host determines who sits at places of honor and who does not. And this particular host is inclined to move people. He asks one man to take a higher place and another to take a lower one. I would put to you, my friends, that this is good news. Jesus is telling us that the host is his Father. And the place we find ourselves in life is a result of God's will. The parable also tells us that our place is likely to change. So if you today find yourself in a lowly place, if you're crushed by the loss of someone you love, or that the world's events are weighing down heavily upon you, you're not sure if you can go on, this is a parable of hope. At any time, God, the host, can come to you, and say, here is something new. Here is a new beginning. My friend, move up higher. If you find yourself working in a difficult or perhaps even unjust situation on this Labor Day weekend, this parable asks you to hold on. A job is not forever, and God has the power to make things better. Conversely, however, if you find yourself today at a place of honor, if everything is going well in your life, rejoice, be glad. But know this, you are not always guaranteed that place. Oh, we can be rightfully proud of our life and our family. Rejoice, as I say, but don't get too comfortable. Life has a way of rearranging us. And there may come a time when things get a bit jumbled. Places move in life. We know that. Sometimes up, sometimes down. But the host always accompanies. The host always is by our side. And sometimes God says, come up higher. But other times, the Lord may very well say to us, I need you over here for a while. The places in which we find ourselves are less important than the fact that we're even at the table, though. Perhaps we ask ourselves, what am I doing here? Or even more, what am I supposed to do now that I'm here? To that point, the Jewish theologian Martin Buber was once asked a fundamental question: where is God? Perhaps many of us asked that question this past week on Wednesday morning when the news from Minneapolis reached us. Where is God? Buber rightly avoided the cliche answer, well, God is everywhere. Instead, he responded, God is found between people. God is found in the relationships that bind us to one another, even if we can't see, especially if we can't see Him. So ask yourself, what does the space between me and the other look like these days? You're at the table for a reason. You were invited. God called you in baptism. So you're at the table for a reason, regardless of your seat location. But newsflash, so is the other guy. He's at the table for a reason too. Ask the Lord for the grace to understand why. and what to do next. You may find your answer in a banquet hall. You may find it in the aftermath of a disaster, as we all discovered 20 years ago this weekend when Hurricane Katrina rearranged, to say the least, the Gulf Coast. You'll find the answer in your living room, in your classrooms at school, in your boardrooms at work. You'll find the answer along the border, in prisons, in shelters. And yes, you'll find it in churches riddled with bullets, or even filled with hosannas. If we seek it, we will find it. When we humble ourselves, and that's what this whole parable is about, humbling oneself. When we humble ourselves long enough to realize that everyone at this table is invited, not because they got a good deal, or they paid extra, or they sweet-talked their way in, but rather they're there, all of us, by the gracious invitation of the host. When we realize that, well, it's then that we will begin to reflect the love of God in our lives and in our hands and in our hearts. But like that narrow gate that we heard in last week's gospel, we truly have to humble ourselves to pass through. So line up, boys and girls, A to Z, Z to A. Trust the host, the master teacher, and do not neglect the others at the table. For in God alone will we find the place where we truly belong. In Him alone, will we all find a place at the banquet of the Lord.